This is a special edition of the Church Today. This edition will be totally devoted to analyze the third encyclical of Pope Benedict XVI, Charity in Truth. My name is Father Mesa.
And I'm Diane Travis.
Caritas in Veritate, Charity in Truth, the third encyclical of Pope Benedict XVI examines in depth certain aspects of the integral development of our time in the light of charity in truth. The fundamental idea is that charity in truth is the principal driving force behind the authentic human development. Only in charity, illuminated by the light of reason and faith, it's possible to pursue development goals that possess a more humane and humanizing value. The sharing of goods and resources from which authentic development proceeds is not guaranteed by merely technical progress and relationships of utility, but by the potential of love that overcomes evil with good, opening up the path towards reciprocity of consciences and liberties.
What is the contribution of Christianity to the world? Its specific contribution to a true human development in the modern world is a Christian humanism, which is offered and taught through the teachings of the social doctrine of the Church. It does not offer technical solutions and does not claim to interfere in politics, but does have a mission of truth to accomplish for a society that is attuned to man, to his dignity, and to his vocation. The basic question that the encyclical responds throughout the different chapters is, what is a true human development, and how can we reach it? In this time of economic and moral upheaval, Caritas in Veritate helps to decipher and read the difficult context of today's social issues. This encyclical is not pessimistic, but full of hope and very realistic. Caritas in Veritate analyzes deeply the different social issues of our time and was written with scientific and theological rigor that take into account the inseparable union of faith and reason. The themes are presented through the lens of two virtues, charity and justice, oriented to the common good and illuminated by the truth, Christ himself.
Caritas in Veritate is divided into 6 chapters. The message of Populorum Progressio, human development in our time, fraternity, economic development, and civil society, the development of people, rights and duties, and the environment, the cooperation of the human family, and the development of peoples and technology. The first chapter is focused on the message of Populorum Progressio, the encyclical written by Pope Paul VI in 1967, a fresh reading of Populorum Progressio, more than 40 years after its publication, invites us to remain faithful to its message of charity and truth, viewed within the overall context of Paul VI's specific magisterium, and more generally within the tradition of the Church social doctrine. In this first chapter, the Pope goes through the topic of human development as seen by Paul VI. Without the perspective of eternal life, human progress is denied. The Gospel is an indispensable element to construct a free and just society, as Paul VI indicated in Humane Vitae. Benedict XVI also mentions the strong ties between life ethics and social ethics, and then defines development as a vocation.
In the second chapter, the Pope talks of the human development in our time. Now, after retaking many of the social issues presented by Paul VI, Benedict XVI analyzes the measures that would be necessary to provide a solution to problems that are not only new in comparison to those addressed by Pope Paul VI, but also and above all of decisive impact upon the present and future good of humanity. Benedict XVI is concerned about the current economic crisis, but sees it as an opportunity for discernment to shape a new vision for the future. The world's wealth grows, but inequalities increase with new forms of poverty emerging. On poverty, the Pope says that the primary capital to be safeguarded and valued is man, the human person in his integrity. He then refers to the scandal of hunger and says that we need a network of economic institutions capable of guaranteeing regular access to sufficient food and water. Development is also related to the respect for life. Caritas in Veritate states that in many parts of the world there are practices of demographic control which go as far as to impose abortion. Now, there is also in many developed countries the anti-birth mentality that has the risk of being exported as if it were a form of cultural progress. Openness to life is at the center of true development. When a society moves toward the denial or suppression of life, it ends up no longer finding the necessary motivation and energy to strive for man's true good. Now, Chapter 1 also presents religious freedom as an aspect connected to development and refers to the two extremes of religion, fundamentalism and atheism.
Chapter 3 is devoted to fraternity, economic development, and civil society. Benedict XVI asserts that when man does not realize that he is made for giving, he thinks of himself as the sole author of his life and society. At the origin of this conception, which is so erroneously diffused in our society, is original sin, the ignorance of the fact that man was created good, but he sinned, and from that moment he has a nature inclined to evil. A true human development must make room for the principle of gratuitousness, and this is particularly relevant for the market, because without internal forms of solidarity, the market by itself cannot accomplish its function. Economic activity needs to be directed towards the pursuit of the common good. Benedict XVI is not pessimistic about economical activity, but warns that economy and finance as instruments can be used badly when those at the helm are motivated by purely selfish ends. Instruments that are good in themselves can thereby be transformed into harmful ones.
Chapter 3 also addresses the topic of business enterprises and mentions that one of the greatest risks for businesses is that they respond only almost exclusively to their investors, and this limits their social value. Management, says Benedict XVI, cannot concern only with the interest of the owners, but must assume responsibility for all other stakeholders that contribute to the business, like the workers, clients, suppliers, the community of reference. Now, at this point, the Pope says, what should be avoided is a speculative use of financial resources that yields to the temptation of seeking only short-term profit without regard for the long-term sustainability of the enterprise, its benefit to the real economy, and attention to the advancement in its suitable and appropriate ways of further economic initiatives in countries in need of development. The theme of business enterprises is related to globalization, which is not good or bad, but we should not be its victims, but its protagonists, acting in the light of reason, guided by charity and truth. Globalization is a well-directed process open the possibility of large-scale redistribution of wealth. However, if it is misdirected, it can increase poverty and inequality and could trigger a world crisis.